Elizabeth of York was born in the Palace of Westminster, on February the 11th, 1466. Elizabeth was the firstborn child of King Edward IV, and Elizabeth Woodville. She had 9 brothers and sisters. 2 of her brothers would become the princes that went missing from the Tower. Edward V was 13 years old, and his younger brother Richard was 11. Their disappearance has always been a mystery. Elizabeth herself would be betrothed, briefly, to George Neville, when she was 3 years old. In 1475, she would again be betrothed to Charles, the Dauphin of France, but again this bore no fruit. She would finally marry Henry VII, and many believed it became a very loving marriage, producing 7 children. Elizabeth's education would have been one befitting her royal station as a princess. Usually girls of her station would have been sent from their home at the age of 7, to be taught the skills they needed to learn. Elizabeth was not. She was kept close to her family. She would have been taught mathematics skills, to read, and to write, which would enable her to run various households. She would have been taught how to dance and ride, and possibly archery. Elizabeth of York married Henry VII, on January the 18th, 1486, only after he himself had been crowned king, and only after the titulus regius had been repealed, relegitimizing the issue of Edward IV, ensuring any children Elizabeth and Henry had, would have a legitimate claim to the throne after his demise. Once this was accomplished, Elizabeth herself was crowned queen, on November the 25th, 1487. For 17 years, Elizabeth would reign as queen consort, next to Henry VII. Elizabeth would go on to produce 7 children with King Henry VII, the eldest being Arthur, Prince of Wales, Margaret, Queen of Scots, Henry VIII, Elizabeth Tudor, Mary, Queen of France, Edmund, Duke of Somerset, and finally, Catherine Tudor. Arthur died of a sickness, leaving Henry to ascend to the throne in his place. Elizabeth would become mother to one of the most famous kings in English history, as well as grandmother to his children, Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward. After their beloved son Arthur tragically died of a sickness, at the tender age of 15, Elizabeth and Henry, as heartbroken as they were, decided they could still have more children. Elizabeth was only 37. Another baby was conceived, and born on February 2, 1503. Sadly, little baby Catherine Tudor died 8 days later. Elizabeth contracted a postpartum infection, and died herself on her 37th birthday, February 11, 1503. Contrary to previous behavior, the king gave his beloved wife Elizabeth an impressive funeral. Her remains would be interred at Westminster Abbey. Henry VII would also be buried with his beloved wife several years later.